This video is just about vampire symbolism and how it pertains to Saturn, in my opinion. So, the first one I want to talk about, which is kind of stupid, from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So, Dio, right? He's the main antagonist in season 3. You have Dio, he's a vampire. Even if you don't watch the show, it doesn't matter. But he has the ability to control time. His power is to stop time. His name is Dio, which is Italian for, I was gonna say it's Latin, but Latin, it sounds almost the same. It's like Deus or whatever, but Dio is Italian for God, and his ability is to stop time. And when he stops time, what he yells is the world, or in Japanese, he goes Zawardo. But so yeah, Saturn, the world in tarot, the middle finger, which again, Saturn is just the umbrella term. There's a lot of stuff that Saturn is associated with. And for example, like just the middle finger, like you use that as like a vulgar way to say fuck you or whatever. It's interesting. Marina Abramovich, back in like 2016 where people were talking about spirit cooking and stuff. And I have the video. I'll pull it up in another video. And I've actually, I've been on the internet for a long time. I had a previous channel. I've talked about it in the past. I had an Instagram. I've talked about it in the past. But I'm kind of just reiterating it and trying to do this stuff once and for all and share my information with you guys. But Marina Abramovich, spirit cooking, she was mixing like different bodily fluids and like painting around with them. She's done stuff with Bill Gates and Jay-Z, and she's like an artist, a performative artist, and she is like an insider with some influential people. One of the things she wrote on the wall in her like concoction of like excrement and blood and urine and all this stuff is, it's like cut into the middle finger on your left hand and eat the pain or something like that. It's written on the wall. Again, I have it on video. Obviously, like your left hand, you think of like the left hand path. And again, it's all symbolic stuff. Like, there used to be like superstition about like left-handed people being wrong or evil because it was kind of like unorthodox or whatever. And obviously that's a bit superstitious, but when you just think about it like symbolically, it makes sense. Like the left-hand path is associated with like satanic ideology, and then you couple that with like the middle finger and the concept of like eating the pain and like relishing in the pain is emblematic of villain archetypes. Like they are often motivated by pain or like defined by pain in many ways, right? Like they go through suffering and then they resent the world and yada yada. We'll explore that more. To get it back on the topic of vampire, I find it interesting that Marina Abramovich was painting in blood, which is like obviously associated with vampires. They suck blood. Just to talk about it a little bit further before I get too more into the JoJo stuff, because I don't actually have examples of this. It's just in my head and I'm going to forget if I don't say it. And I'm already probably forgetting examples that I had in the past. Like the concept of a vampire having to be invited in, like an old vampire lore. You had to invite it into your house. That kind of shows how sin or evil or whatever can only kind of take root if you give it permission, and that's somewhat of like a powerful message. There's also stuff about how you defeat vampires, right? You have the cross, you have sunlight. It's not coincidence that like sunlight, like the sun and sunlight are obviously like symbolic of the antithesis to this Saturn archetype. In my opinion, you have the black sun, which is Saturn. You have like the regular sun, which is like the hero, Jesus, all that kind of stuff, like the traditional heroic archetype. And then you have like the antithesis of that, which is like a corrupt hero or like a twisted clone. And it makes sense that sunlight would be damaging to a creature of this nature. That's all I wanted to say about that, because those are examples I don't have. I wouldn't be reminded of them later on. Another thing is like how vampires sleep, like, traditionally like with the X, like they sleep with their arms crossed like that. The X symbol, again, is another Saturn thing. I see how I'm getting derailed and I'm not focusing on the vampire. I'll do a whole video on the X stuff. And I think I think the evidence is quite convincing. I know I probably sound kind of crazy to you guys, but middle finger, the Mount of Saturn, scythe, sickle, so Grim Reaper, time, brain, agriculture, right? Which I'll get into in another video, watch, hourglass, time. So the ability is best known for Dio's activation and cancellation phrases, the world, time stop. So he's a vampire. He can stop time, and his name is God, essentially. Another interesting thing, because Dio wasn't always a vampire. In the first season of the show, he puts on this stone mask, and it's what transforms him into a vampire. And it's for the sake of like power, immortality, all this stuff. The reason I included this is because this Saturn archetype as much as you want to like gussy it up and dress it up, like, oh, the hero or the villain's just misunderstood. And it's like, to some extent, that is true. Like, you could say in the same breath, like a tyrant, for example, really just wanted to protect people, right? Like, okay, yeah, a tyrant on some level probably does want to protect people. But at its base level, it's based on like an actual fundamental resentment for humanity. And like, if you put it in like tyrannical terms, it's like, okay, humanity's like too stupid or chaotic or whatever to govern themselves. Freedom, there can't be allowed like a sliver of unpredictability, so I have to like control it. There's too much pain, too much death. I have to like create a monopoly on it and control it and keep everyone safe. That's if you're trying to like make the best case argument for them. This whole philosophy underneath it all kind of puts a damper on that case, because it's the base of it is like a rejection of humanity. Like, there's a bit of hate and resentment there. It's kind of like Darth Vader and like Anakin. It's like, okay, I will even learn how to stop people from dying, like stuff like that. He's motivated by his mom dying and all that stuff. But what does he do at the Jedi Temple? He kills a bunch of kids. I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to justify that one. You know what I mean? It makes it a little hard to believe you that you're doing this for my own good. You know what I mean? So Dio rejects his own humanity, wants to like ascend to like a kind of godhood. So thousands of years before scientists understood the complex and extraordinary life-sustaining properties of blood, the Bible informed that the life of every creature is in its blood. In ancient Israel, blood was not only a metaphor or symbol for life, it was equivalent to life itself. And most occurrences where blood was shed in scripture, it meant that life had ended. To remove blood is to terminate life. There's a lot of ways you can think about, like, if you describe, I was just saying, Dio says, how does he stop time? He says the world, right? And you, what's that old Smashing Pumpkin song? The world is a vampire. And it's like mundus, the world, all this stuff. And basically most religions is like antagonistic. The temporal versus the eternal, like the profane versus the sacred. The world is like symbolically antagonistic to, it's often tied up with like the bad, the evil, right? There's a lot of ways to interpret them sucking blood if the world is a vampire. It's like maybe part of it is pretty literal, like, people say like adrenochrome and all that kind of stuff. Who knows? That's a pretty further out there one. But if you want to be like metaphorical about it, it's like, and maybe not though, because like it depends on how crazy you want to get with it. Because if what's, I kind of believe this, and I'll make my case in other videos. I know this is just one video, but it's like, people say like archons and stuff like that, or egregores and things like that. If like thoughts and feelings and interdimensional creatures or whatever exist behind like a veil, and they kind of act through us, they could only exist through us. It's like there might literally be like entities like feeding off of fear and anger and all this stuff like that. I don't actually think that's impossible. You could think of it as like taxation or like demoralization. Like, they're sucking like your optimism and like your enthusiasm and like your hope, and they're grinding you down, and they're taking your money and all this stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways you can think about like being drained by the world. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I know JoJo, I think this is just about the JoJo thing. I know JoJo has like a reputation for naming characters and powers and abilities after like bands, musicians, and songs, in my opinion. And people might like write the whole like parallel of Dio meaning God off, like, oh, it's just because of like Dio from like Black Sabbath, and that's probably maybe a little true, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he chose that name for that character. That's just my opinion. That's all I'm gonna say about that. There's a lot of different ways you can think about these like archetypes, and they obviously exist in Bible, like the Bible, and like religions and history and your own anecdotal personal life inside of you, like internally inside of you, your relationships with other people. You kind of culminate all that into a big understanding, and obviously the Bible is not an exclusion. Like, there's a lot of truth and like wisdom and interesting stuff in there. For example, I will no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming, and he has nothing in me. Now the judgment of this world, now the ruler of this world will be cast out, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air. What I'm trying to set up for you, right? Like, for example, behind me, right? it's kind of like symbolic, the entire investigation of this channel. It's life and death, like symbolically. It's not as simple as just like, oh, a living being and like a dead thing, like literal life and death, although it does encompass that, obviously. But those are conceptually, symbolically, the two things that we're kind of like wrestling with. And it's a very broad concept. Purpose in including these Bible verses was just to show that Bible clearly describes like Satan and like malevolent forces. Like the world is used in an like a antagonistic kind of framing, like it's a villainous framing. It's not you're supposed to resist the world, right? Saturn is named after the Roman god of agriculture. We'll get into that. I have a million things on that. Who's also in charge of conformity, social order, creating civilization. There's a lot of things. I have to limit what I'm saying about this stuff to other videos because otherwise one video would be 50 hours long. Just keep that stuff in mind, right? Like you're gonna see that, like conformity, like the consolidation, the unification of things, agriculture, grains, corn, wheat, crops, creating civilizations. It is named the tarot card the world, the last card in the major arcana. So yeah, and like JoJo, back to JoJo, like in JoJo Part 3, all, not all, but many of the powers are named after like cards from the major arcana of tarot. Beginning of the New World Order, even before its actual appearance, its rumored power was enough to strike fear and instill loyalty into Dio's followers. Again, so like classic villain stuff, you know, to go back to Star Wars, there's that scene with like Darth Vader where he chokes that guy out and he says, "I find your lack of faith disturbing," that scene. But before that happens, that guy, that Imperial general says some shit like, "The fear of this battle station will keep everyone in line." So you have the Death Star, which is the dark star, the black sun, Saturn. It's a weapon so powerful that it can blow up entire planets, and it's a symbol of like ultimate fear and coercion in the galaxy. And he's basically saying we don't even really have to like police people as much anymore. Like everyone is going to be just coerced into behaving themselves. What are things like the villain says to the heroes, like, "Oh, you're naive, you're idealistic, you're like a child," and stuff like that, because obviously peace can be achieved through other means, but it is idealistic and it is hard and it requires like extreme personal accountability and like extreme like personal reformation.
So crazy, they would kill all these people for the blood, but obviously that's what the fuck they're doing. They just stole it from them.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like in the movies, man. What's bigger than vampire movies? You know, vampire. They just want to. They make that girls fantasize about getting bit in the neck by a vampire. It's like a romantic thing.
What was it? That, no,
right? Is it?
Yes, it is.
That was the goal, right? To
fact,
get people to want that shit.
Yeah. In fact, tuberculosis, before it was called that, it was called consumption. And you have famous poets saying, "Oh, that I would die of consumption rather than any other old age or anything." This was only like in the 1800s. You know, you go white. You know this white look that the supermodels are doing? They've got this white, skinny, gaunt. That's the consumption look. They actually just transplanted it from the days when tuberculosis... Is it called tuberculosis?
Yeah.
That's a disease.
Consumption.
Yeah.
Right. So they transplanted it from then when people thought it was a chic to die of it, and now they're making supermodels and famous people look white and dying of consumption, because that is the ultimate disease to die from.
Yeah. Whoa.
Death
tuberculosis.
You know, the reason I included this is because it really shows, like, it's an example of what I've been calling death culture. There's explicit manifestations or examples of death culture, and there's more, like, subtle or, like, implicit examples. And this would be, like, more of a subtle or, like, an implicit one. Like, oh, you have this vampire, and he's, like, charming. It's like this adoration and love for like the darkness and like the villain. And it is a form of like cultural conditioning. You know, how much did we see of that? In regards to like death culture, it's just one of those things that I was talking about. You have to have like a change of heart, right? Like there's certain things, and you have to like to have the knowledge to see it, because like knowledge and perception are completely linked. If you don't see something, you don't see something if you don't understand it or know about it to a certain extent. A mechanic, I'll just use a simple one. Like if a mechanic opened the hood of your car and you don't know anything about cars, and the mechanic obviously knows a lot about cars, like he would literally be seeing a bunch of different things under the hood than you would, because he has the knowledge and you don't. And it's a lot like that with meaning and symbols and metaphor and archetypes and like philosophies kind of stuff. Like that's injected into like culture. You don't really understand. I mean, sometimes it's really obvious. Like you have Billie Eilish on stage saying like, I want to end me. And then you have like a bunch of 10-year-old girls singing along with it. I want to end me. Like that's obviously like not good. And then there's like weird other throwaway lines in that song where it's like, oh, I'm killing the sun and like all this other stuff. Yeah, it was a good example of death culture, and one of the ways we see that is like the romanticizing pain, putting pain and tragedy on a pedestal. Like how many people get into like these toxic relationships and they're like, oh, it's just so tragic, and like and music and stuff, it's only good when there's like pain and tragedy behind it all. It's like I get those are like components of life, but there's a difference between like expressing that stuff and just talking about it versus like putting it on a pedestal. And if you can't see that, I think you should just open your eyes. So this is interesting, right? Back to the JoJo thing, for example. I know I probably sound insane to a lot of you guys, but the world, so there's a game where Dio, the Saturn vampire guy, he gets an enhanced power, right? And it's called the world over heaven. Gains a god, so he gets a new power. Instead of just the world, it's called the world over heaven. So it's literally like, we talked about how like idealism, the eternal, all this stuff is like antagonistic to the world and all of that, symbolically speaking. And it's like the name of the power is the world over heaven. So he's transcended heaven. The hierarchy has been rearranged. He's like put himself at the top. The world's over heaven. And the signature ability of his move is he gets the power to overwrite reality. So he gets to like create anything he wants. Or I never played this game, but it's fitting symbolically, like the name and the ability. It's like truth has been subjugated to him. Truth doesn't exist. This is where you could get derailed. You remember how we were talking about like agriculture, Saturn, civilization building. Cain built the first city and stuff like that. He went to the land of Nod after murdering his brother. It's like escapism, right? Escapism is a huge component to villain archetype, right? And think about yourself when you're like participating in escapism. Why is the fucking Xbox called that? Why is it called an Xbox? And I know that sounds stupid to you guys, like if you don't know what I'm talking about, but if you watch my other videos, I promise you, like there's something there. And I'm not saying this to be mean. To my point about escapism, the reason I brought that up is because like an overbearing mother who wants to shield you from reality and like truth, that's kind of like what this stuff is. And Dio is kind of feminine too. He's kind of gay, and like JoJo has like that element too where like people are like a little flamboyant. It's part of its like personality of the show. Like they're dressed kind of like extravagantly and they act kind of crazy and stuff, but Dio is like subtly hinted at as maybe even being gay. I don't know, I just think that's fitting. Hope that makes sense. Again, this is just an old one, but it's important to know if you don't know this stuff, guys. Like, and it's fitting. The word Capitolium still lives in the English word capital, and Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. is widely assumed to be named after the Capitoline Hill. The hill was earlier known as Mons Saturnus, dedicated to the god Saturn. So, Capitol Hill, where all the laws and bills and all the legalities of the United States are dealt with, is named after a thing from Rome that was named after Saturn. And again, that's fitting. Like, what is law? And I'm not saying every law is bad, because we have some laws that are like that match up with moral law, right? And this is part of the reason, like the conflict between the Jews and Jesus, right? Like Jesus was sentenced to death by a Sanhedrin, which is a Jewish court of law, and the Jewish people are very like law oriented. And you think about the judges wearing the black robes and all that crap. It's not a coincidence. I know this is like old information to a lot of you, but a lot of people don't know this stuff. Think about like when Jesus got sentenced to death. Like one of the points of contention, which sounds silly, it's like, oh, you healed a person on the Sabbath. You disobeyed the law. You're not supposed to break the law. Even though Jesus saw like healing the person takes like the meaning and the duty of like helping someone took precedence over some arbitrary bullshit law. A lot of times nowadays people will say like, oh, well, that's the law, or governments themselves, like Alex Jones used to joke around like, it's legal, we have authorized it. Like when Obama created, like, it wasn't an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement. I think it was an NDAA. I remember what it stood for, but basically gave himself the legal authority to like arrest anyone, anywhere, anytime, no trial, no nothing. I know that it's just an example. It's like how the law does not always mean good, obviously, right? You could legislate something bad law does not mean good. Although sometimes, and I'm not saying I'm an unlawful person. Like there's a lot of laws that make sense. Like you shouldn't rape and kill and steal and hurt people. Like I agree. Another way that like it shows Saturn is like symbolically the ruler of this world, right? It's like government itself, it's like finances itself, all that kind of stuff. So this is a movie where it's about Vlad the Impaler, and he gets like known as Dracula, right? And he has like a scene where he's talking to like a literal vampire. Just look up like Dracula Untold, sometimes the world needs a monster or something like that. And it's about like coercion and all that stuff that I already talked about. Vlad was justifying his impaling of people because he's like, if we did that to one village, it would spare 100 more because people would be too afraid to do anything. So the justification is like, we're gonna use fear and like brutality to keep people in line, and in the long run, we're going to save more lives that way. And another interesting thing, which we're going to get into right after this, I think, if I was smart enough to include my examples, it's a bit of an overlap, right? The dragon. The vampire guy says, Lord Vlad, son of the devil, or something, and he corrects him. He's like, no, you're mistaken. It actually means son of the dragon. And it's like, it's funny because they're arguing about that, or they're doing a little back and forth. There is no difference. I'll let you guys in. There's no difference between those things. The same way, it's like Joseph Campbell, the hero with 1,000 faces, right? It's like it's a different mask on the same face. That's what an archetype is. It has like different ways of its expressing itself, but it's like fundamental. And maybe each expression focuses on like a different tiny attribute of it, like a different characteristic of it, but fundamentally it's all part of the same thing. The dragon, right? And we were talking about tyranny, coercion. Like, what's a way you can describe a tyrannical government? What's a word for that? Draconian, Draco, dragon. And it's historically accurate too. Like, the name for dragon was appended to his own name, Dracul, as luck would have it. Dracul also meant devil in Romanian, thus Vlad came to be known as Vlad Dracul, son of the devil. The legend of Dracula grew on the heels or necks of other literary figures. Just stuff like this too, man. This is an old one. Alfa Romeo. The logo still kind of looks like this, but they changed it to look less grotesque. Car company, right? You have these things over here. Don't miss that infinity loop, the Ouroboros, all that stuff, Saturn shit. It's why Facebook changed its name to Meta, and their logo is that. And again, we talk about escapism. The Xbox, it looks like a freaking monolith from 2001 Space Odyssey. Half the game developers are named Cube this, Black Sun that, Unity Engine, which is the Cube. Like, they tell you guys this stuff. They fly certain flags, so to speak. And a lot of the technology and like escapism routes are riddled with stuff like this. It's not an accident that Meta changed their name to that. And you know what all the Hebrew speakers said when they changed their name to Meta? They're like, oh, it sounds like Facebook dead. Well, what's death? Death is Saturn. And then that's their logo. Give me a break. And when they announced it, one of the images they use, Saturn's in the background. It's like you're just not paying attention if you're not picking up on it, in my opinion. But like back to the dragon thing and vampire thing, and I could do a whole video on dragons, and I likely will, so there's a bit of overlap here. But see, you have the dragon or the snake. It's got a crown on his head, and I mean, what's he eating? What's he feeding on? Well, a human being. So I don't know, man. What does that have to do with cars? Why is that on your fucking car logo? Excuse my language, but like a little weird. You know what I mean? So here's kind of getting a little bit from vampire to dragon, but they have a lot of overlap. All this stuff has a lot of overlap, as you'll see. According to Philo of Byblos, the Phoenician author explained Dagon as a word for grain. So Dagon is like a Saturnian, it's just another civilization's version of a Saturn god. It's literally the word dragon without the R in it. It's a word. So Philo, the Phoenician, which I'll talk about the Phoenicians if you don't know anything about them. Dagon, so the word dragon without is a word for grain, which we already talked about with like agriculture and stuff. You see how all this overlaps with each other, and you see why I'm always going off on tangents, because it's kind of impossible not to. The Order of the Dragon, literally Society of the Dragoness, was a monarchical, chivalric order only for selected higher aristocracy and monarchs, founded in 1408 by Sigismund of Luxembourg, who was the king of Hungary and later became Holy Roman Empire. It was fashioned after the military orders of the Crusades, requiring its initiates to defend the cross and fight enemies of Christianity, particularly the Ottoman Empire. And it's like, I like Christianity, but like anything named after like Dragon and Draco and all that stuff, Prince Vlad II Dracul, the father of Vlad the Impaler, took his name from the Order of the Dragon. So it's just, again, you see the overlap between brain, dragon, vampirism, all this stuff. I hope some of that made sense. I'm trying to wrap this video up. I've been talking way longer than I wanted to.
You gotta be kidding me.
Dracula's only one of the names he's gone by. The Babylonians worshipped him as Dagon, and now they call him Drake. Believe in the legends, he was born in ancient Sumeria.
I can go to the police.
They own the police. You have to understand they're everywhere. Chances are you've seen them yourself and didn't know it. On the subway or in a bar.
Just from the Blade thing, Dracula, Drake, Dagon, all the same thing. I included that other example because she's like, oh, they own the police. And in this case, it's like, you know, there's multiple ways you can interpret that in a real sense. It's like, okay, they own the police. As I showed you, Capitol Hill is named after Saturn. So like law itself is like symbolically tied up with this stuff. But beyond that, like you could say like the government and all that stuff, the lawmakers themselves are actually tied up in this. Like presidents, Congress, the police are obviously like, I'm not saying the average policeman is, and I'm not even saying the average policeman is bad, but as we saw during COVID, I mean, go watch, you know, Canadian police, for example, during COVID and how they were talking to people. I literally have videos of cops saying, like, I don't believe in this, but I'm following the orders and I'm going to enforce it. And I'm not saying, I don't know, man, that's bad. Like, you're not exercising conscience when you're following orders. You know, I like police people. I think they're brave and I think they do a lot of good stuff. But obviously there's a danger there. I mean, they're the enforcers of something. So some guy could, in theory, write something down and everyone has a ton of faith in them to, like, not follow unconstitutional stuff. But I'm not so convinced about that personally.
House Dracul, son of the devil.
You're mistaken. Memes, son of the dragon.
Yes, so I have that part, but I missed that whole conversation they have about where he says, basically, he's like impaling people to instill fear in everyone, keep everyone in line, and how the world doesn't need a hero, it needs a monster, right? So again, it's like Antichrist. That's what the Antichrist is. The Antichrist comes in, and again, you don't have to believe in the Bible for this. The Antichrist is like a thing, a spirit that lives inside of people, but it's also likely, like, it's an archetype, it's a spirit, it's a set of values, it's a belief system, but it's also, if you want to get really into it, it could be like an actual figure that comes up that it, think about it, what that is like, it's a set of values. Like, think of Jesus, right? Jesus is, the word took on flesh, so it's a belief system, and some person came along and embodied it perfectly. That's why there's a lot of weird debate about, like, is Jesus God or not? And, like, I say yes, because if he's like if he's the perfect embodiment of God's will and God's teachings and God's everything, if he's matching that perfectly, he becomes basically indistinguishable from God. And the reverse is true. So like the Antichrist is the embodiment of all these other sets of values. And biblically speaking, that's one of the things the Antichrist is prophesized to do, is to like unify man and like create an illusion of peace, essentially.
But beyond that, it's a vampire conspiracy in that they are interdimensionally sucking the essence of our youth.
Right.
And they believe they're possessed by an off-world entity and cut off the pedophiles and psychic vampires that are control of this AI system before humanity's destroyed.
You know, like, I know Alex Jones sounds crazy, and it's kind of funny. Like, it's a vampire conspiracy, and Joe's just like, right. Like, it is kind of funny. You know, he says influenced by off-world stuff. Like, if you want to look at it, if you're an atheist, you don't believe in like spiritual realities at all, like if you want to be completely secular about it, all that could mean is like these beliefs, these values, these feelings, these thoughts, these philosophies are dramatizations. Well, there's dramatizations or personifications of these things that have been distilled and represented as like demons and such. They're of such consequence in people's lives, in the trajectory of humanity and the world, that it's almost like it doesn't matter if they're real in a conventional sense, which I do believe they are, to be honest. I'll just be transparent. But I just want you to like not throw all this stuff out if this kind of language scares you away. You know, one of the things I learned very early on was like how to kind of like think around words. Like people oftentimes they hear a word and they can't, I don't know, their brain shuts down. They like immediately they hear a word and they kind of throw everything else out. Like if I said the Bible or if I said the word God or whatever, like it's not limited to religious ideas. It could be anything. But Alex Jones saying they're, you know, possessed by some off-world entity, and he's saying like an AI system, which is interesting. We talked about, I mean, even OpenAI, we talked about Meta using the Ouroboros and Meta being like a Hebrew word for dead. OpenAI, I mean, people did that dumb little thing where they overlapped it. And it's like a Star of David, which is funny because I was saying that forever ago. And it's not even the Star of David thing. It's the middle of it is a hexagon, which is a cube, which is really what that is. It's a Saturn thing. You know, you had the creator Sam Altman, which means Altman means old man. It's just like, it's too many things that you can't make sense of it. And I'm not saying like it's people doing this, you know, I don't know. Altman means old man. Saturn is like an old man. A lot of depictions of him show him sucking life force out of a baby, and you can be like, oh, well, it just means the passage of time. People say things, I'm not trying to be mean, but people say things to me that are like first level analysis that they think I don't consider. Like, oh, have you ever thought of like Saturn means like memento mori? Like remember that you're gonna die and like live in the moment and stuff? It's like, yeah, at best, that's what it means, but you're missing like an entire world of other stuff that's obviously out there. Yeah, with the extracting life from a baby thing, it's like, yeah, I get like time, obviously, but like maybe it's not, maybe multiple things are true at once, you know what I mean? Anyways, let's just finish this up. It's Alex Jones just kind of going over a little bit of history, and that'll be the end of the video.
Prince Charles is campaigning to save forests of Transylvania, inspired by his ancestral links to Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century nobleman better known as Dracula. And it just goes on to talk about that, oh, he really is of the line of the dragon, or Dracul. They're sucking us dry. They're psychic vampires. This is real. That's what the New World Order is. It's run by these folks. Wake up to it, realize it, understand it, face it. Because when you're blind to these people, they continue to win. Now, I want to be clear before the New York Times or Washington Post says, I believe in physical vampires. This is psychological, spiritual.
Right, so he's just saying Prince Charles, if you're into the whole like Illuminati bloodline thing, which I don't really like get into, like, oh, it's these like families and stuff, and I'm not saying there is no element of that, it's just not something I really like cared about. Like, I'm not too into like the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds or anything like that. There's obviously like an element of that there. Just wanted to show that last little piece where he kind of goes over what I've been talking about. Dracul, dragon, it's all the same thing, and how there's like a spiritual side to it. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. I hope some of that made sense.